Hey, what's up everybody? 8-Bit Flashback here. Today, I will show you how to build a miniature Sega Genesis or Megadrive using the Retroflag Mega Pi case, a Raspberry Pi 3, and the Blast16 emulator front end, which features a very awesome looking user interface that's designed for Sega fans in mind, and it looks amazing. And this will allow you to play games for Sega Genesis or Megadrive, Game Gear, Sega CD, 32X, and Master System. So my preferred case to use for this project is the Retroflag Mega Pi case for the Raspberry Pi 3. This features a safe shutdown, a reset button, and it's fully compatible with the Blast16 software. And you can pick one of these up for right around $22 on Amazon or eBay. If you're looking for a video on how to assemble the Mega Pi case, I do have a video that covers that, and I'll make sure to post a link down below. Now you don't have to use the Mega Pi case for this project, because the Blast16 software is designed to work with the Raspberry Pi 3. So you could just build a custom case with a 3D printer, or even use a Sega Genesis USB hub like this. And what this actually is a USB hub that could be modified by putting a Raspberry Pi 3 inside of this, making it a functional mini Sega Genesis. But there is some modding skills involved in order to make this work. And if you want to get crazy, you could even use the Retroflag Super Nintendo case like this, but it obviously makes a lot more sense if you use something that actually looks like a Sega Genesis or Megadrive. For compatible controllers, you can use the wired USB Retrobit Sega controllers like this. Or for a wireless option, you can use 8-bit DO Bluetooth controllers. And there is other compatible controllers out there that I found will work, such as this Retrolink Sega Saturn controller. Okay, it is time to get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is head over to the Blast16 website, and all these links will be down below. Now we're going to click on the Download tab, and that'll take us to the latest build. Now go ahead and click Download. And that should take you to a Google link. And when we click on that, you might get a message saying it can't scan for viruses, blah blah blah. I'm just going to download it anyway. Now go ahead and save it somewhere where you can find it easily. I'm going to save all mine to my desktop. And this file size is going to be about 1.5 GB, so it will take a little bit to download. So while we're waiting, we're going to go ahead and download the next thing, and that's going to be Etcher. And what this is a image writing program. And this is how we're going to write the Blast16 software to our micro SD card. So the link will be down below for this as well. And all you want to do here is pick the version that's compatible with your computer, and then go ahead and download that. So I got all my files downloaded now, and now I'm going to click on the Etcher program, and I'm going to go ahead and install that. So I right clicked on it, then I run as administrator. Now that's going to bring up a tab here so I can install it. So I'm going to say yes to continue the installation, then agree. Now if you already have Etcher on your computer, then this is going to be a step you can skip, obviously. Also other programs such as Win32 Disk Imager will work as well. But for this tutorial, we're just going to concentrate on using Etcher. After you're done installing Etcher, it should create a shortcut on your desktop, and it may open the program as well. And if it does, just go ahead and minimize that window for now, because we're going to do a couple other things before we use Etcher. Now I'm going to create a new folder on my desktop, and I'm going to label that Blast16. You can name this whatever you want, but what we're going to do is extract the contents from the Blast16 software inside of this folder. So I'm going to open up the zip archive, which I downloaded earlier from Blast16, and inside here we're going to find, I think, 5 different files. So I'm going to grab all these and extract them to my new folder on my desktop. And this may take a few minutes because it is a couple gigabytes. So after extracting those files from that zip archive to our new folder, we should have 5 different files inside here. We're going to have an image, we're going to have a manual, and a couple other different files in here. Now if we click on that manual, that's going to be a very nicely detailed manual that's going to cover a lot of different steps. And I'm going to try to give you a lot of information about Blast16 throughout this video, but I'm not going to be able to cover everything, so I would highly recommend reading through this manual to learn a lot more about Blast16. Inside here you'll find a lot of useful stuff, such as what ROM formats are accepted, folder structures, BIOS instructions, and much more. So now it's time to get our micro SD card all set up and ready to get the image written to it. So the first thing we're going to do with that micro SD card is get that plugged into your computer, and we're going to get that formatted. So once that's plugged into my computer, I'm going to right click on it, and then select Format from the drop-down menu, and then I'm going to format it with FAT32. So just do a quick format, that's all I need. Now my micro SD card is all formatted and ready, and I'd recommend using at least 8 GB for a micro SD card or bigger. And if you're trying to play some Sega CD, those games are kind of big and they take up a lot of memory, so I'd recommend using at least a 32 GB memory card for that. Now it's time to open up the Etcher program that's located on my desktop, so I'm going to double click on that. And once this window pops up, we're going to click on Select Image. and that's going to bring up a search window where we're going to navigate to wherever our Blast16 release image is located. And mine's located on my desktop inside the Blast16 folder because that's where I extracted the contents from the Blast16 archive earlier. So once you locate the Blast16 release image on your computer, go ahead and select it, then click Open. And now it's time to select our micro SD card. So if you have more than one card plugged in for some reason, make sure you select the right card. So this is the card I'm using. So now I'm going to continue. And now it's time to flash. So we'll go ahead and click on Flash. And now what's going to happen is it's going to start writing the Blast16 release image to our micro SD card. And depending on the speed of your computer, this could take up to 10 to 15 minutes. And of course I can't make you wait that long, so let's go ahead and fast forward just a little bit. And once that does get done flashing, what's going to happen is you might get a couple messages popping up on your computer saying it doesn't recognize the micro SD card and it needs to be formatted. And this is completely normal, and you do not want to format the disk. You want to go ahead and ignore those messages and close them out, otherwise you might have to start this whole process over again. And after it's done flashing the image to the micro SD card, it will go through a validation process, and that'll take a few minutes as well. But once that's done, it will automatically unmount that micro SD card, and at that time, it's time to go ahead and remove the micro SD card from your computer. And now it's time to get our Mega Pi case set up. So I already have my HDMI cable hooked up to my TV along with the power cord plugged in, and now we're going to pop in our micro SD card. And if you're using a wired USB controller, you can go ahead and plug that in at this point as well. And it might automatically recognize the controller and do some auto mapping for you. And more than likely, it's going to be wrong if it's not the Retrobit controller. And I'll show you how to change that here in just a few. So now let's go ahead and power the console on and wait for it to boot up. And as long as you wrote that image to the SD card correctly, you should be greeted by a splash screen saying Blast16. And you also have the capability of using your own custom splash screen. Here's an example of one of mine, and I'll show you how to do this later in the video. So the first time you boot up Blast16, it shouldn't take too long to get to the main menu. And this is what the main menu looks like. And it did automatically recognize my controller, but unfortunately the mapping on it is wrong. And this is a pretty simple fix. I just push the start button to access the menu, then select settings, then input mapping, and then select player 1. And I press A for A, B for B, C for C, etc. Now there's going to be some buttons that you probably don't have on your controller, such as select. For select, just wait 5 seconds, then it moves on to the next button. Now it's going to ask me for L, so I push L for L, R for R. And for the hotkey, at first I used the start button, but that actually doesn't work very well. I'd recommend using a button that you normally don't use on your Sega Genesis games, like the L button or the R button. So now my wired controller is configured properly. Now I'm going to show you how to set up a wireless Bluetooth controller made by 8BitDo. First thing you want to do is make sure your Mega Pi case is in the off position. Now go ahead and press the pairing button on your 8BitDo controller. Once that's in pairing mode, go ahead and turn your Mega Pi case back on. Now your controller should automatically sync up, and the mapping should be automatic as well. However, if you notice here, I'm not using the 8BitDo Sega controller, so the mapping might be a little funky, but that's where you can go into your settings and change the mapping to whatever you like. With some controllers, the first time you plug them in, the mapping will automatically pop up and let you select the button mapping, but this doesn't work for all controllers. For instance, with this controller, I can get through all the mapping, get all the buttons selected, but when I go to play the game, the buttons are still wrong, so not all controllers are going to be compatible. So now that we have all our controllers configured, it's time to go ahead and shut off the Mega Pi case. So let's go ahead and power that off, and now we're going to add some games. And to do that, we're going to use a USB flash drive. And I'm using a 32GB flash drive, and now I'm going to plug this into my computer, then search for it, then right click on it, then select format, and format this with FAT32. Once it's formatted, it's time to go ahead and create some folders on the root of the flash drive. And the first folder I'm going to create is a folder called Games. So that'd be Games in all lowercase letters. For the second folder, I'm going to create a folder called the BIOS in all lowercase letters as well. Now for this next step, this is going to be optional. This is going to be if you want to add your own custom splash screen to the beginning intro every time your Mega Pi case boots up. And this is very simple to do. All you need to do is find a picture of your choice, make sure it's in a .png format, and name it Splash in all lowercase letters. Once you have that picture renamed, go ahead and select that picture, then drag it to the root of your USB flash drive, and that's it. That's all you have to do. Now again, you don't have to do this step unless you want a custom splash screen. Now let's move on to the next step, and this is going to be for the BIOS folder. So inside this folder is where you're going to place your Sega CD BIOS. Now this is only going to be if you're going to be playing Sega CD. If you don't want to play Sega CD, I would not worry about this step at all. So what you need inside here is a Sega CD BIOS for each region. one for Japan, one for Europe, and one for USA. And these are name specific, so they have to be named a certain way or they will not work. For example, if you're trying to use a Sega CD BIOS for USA, you want to go ahead and rename that to BIOS in all lowercase letters, underscore, capital CD, underscore, capital U. Then for the Japan BIOS, you're going to use a capital J, and then for the PAL BIOS, you're going to use a capital E. Also, another important note that I'd like to mention is that these need to be in a .bin file extension in order to work. So they need to be in a .bin file extension or they will not work. Now let's move back to the root of the flash drive. And now we're going to mess with the games folder. So we're going to click on the games folder. And inside here, we're going to start creating some new folders. So the first one I'm going to create is going to be one for Megadrive. And we're going to call that MD. Now this MD folder will be for Megadrive games and Sega Genesis games. And now I'm going to create 4 more folders for all the systems that this supports. So the next folder is going to be for Sega CD, and we're going to name that CD. The next folder will be for Game Gear, and we're going to label that GG. And the next folder is going to be for 32X, and that's going to be called 32X. And the last folder is going to be for Master System, and we're going to label that MS. And all these folders are going to be in lowercase letters. Now I'm going to create some subfolders inside of each of these folders. So we're going to start with the MD or Megadrive folder. Click on that. Then inside here, I'm going to create a folder called Box Arts in all lowercase letters. Once you have this folder made, it's time to do the same exact thing for the remaining 4 folders. So what you can do here is just copy that folder you already made and then paste that inside each of the remaining folders. Or you can just create a new folder, whichever is easiest for you. So right now what I'm doing is I'm pasting that Box Arts folder in each of these folders. So each of these is going to have its own folder inside of it called Box Arts. So now I have 5 different folders for 5 different systems, with each of these having a Box Arts folder inside them. Now it's time to add some games. On the right side of the screen here, I have some backups for Sega Genesis and Megadrive, and I have thousands of games. But when you're using the Blast16 software, it's recommended not to add over 1,000 games, or it could cause system crashes. And to be honest, anytime I add over 100 games, I do see some slowdown. And the slowdown usually has to do with loading the main menu. Every time I back out of a game, it takes a little bit longer for that main menu to load. I'd recommend, if you want this to work as fast as possible, to add 100 games or less, but that's up to you how many games you want to try to add. The more games you add, the slower it may be. So for right now, for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to add 1 game. So I'm going to drag 1 game from my computer here and drag that over to the Megadrive or MD folder. And there is quite a few different ROM formats that will work. You can do .bin, .smd, .gen, and .md. Now let's open up that Megadrive folder, and inside here we can see the game I just added. Now it's time to add some box art for this game. If you go to the Blast16 website, under the Downloads tab, you will find that there's some box art that you can download for each system. And these are complete collections, so they're going to be fairly large in size for each download. So you can use these if you want, or you can just search the internet for the game you're looking for. So I searched the name of the game plus box art, and that pulls up a bunch of different images I can use. Then when I find the image that I want to use, I just save that to my computer, and you need to make sure that it's in a format of .jpg or .png for this to work. And as far as the dimensions go, it doesn't seem to matter what size the picture is. I was able to use all different kinds of dimensions, and it seems to work just fine, because the Blast16 software automatically will resize these pictures to the correct size. And I already have a bunch of different pictures that are ready for my Blast16 software that I have stored on my computer, so I'm going to go to that folder now. And now I'm going to grab the box art I need and drag that to the box arts folder. So this is going to be for TMT Hyperstone. So now there's one last step to make the box art work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the name of the actual game. And I'm going to go to my box arts folder. Now I'm going to rename my box art to the exact name of the game. So this is what you have to do to make the box art work. It has to have the same exact name as the game name or it will not work. So this step is kind of a pain, but if you want some box art, this is what you're going to have to do. At this point, I've only added 1 game. And now I'm going to go ahead and add another 42 games, and this is the actual games that's going to be on the official Sega Genesis Mini. So these are all Sega Genesis games, so they're going to be added to the MD folder for Megadrive or Sega Genesis games. I've also got some box art ready as well, and all these box arts have already been renamed to have the same exact name as the game name. So I'm going to grab all these box arts and drag them over to the box arts folder. So now I should have 43 games and then 43 box arts that all have the same name as the games. And now if you want to add games for other systems, it's just the same routine. For instance, if I go to the Master System folder, which is going to be the MS folder, and open that up, this is where we're going to put our games, and then the box arts will go in the box arts folder. And something I would like to mention about ROMs is acceptable formats. Zipped ROMs should now work. With the latest update, you should be able to use zipped ROMs as long as they have the correct format inside the zipped archive. But with that being said, I would still recommend to use unzipped ROMs if you can. I just think you have a lot less issues and a lot less to worry about if you're using just regular ROMs. And for the Sega CD games, I did add a couple of those games inside the CD folder, and they are in a .chd format, but other formats should work as well, such as bin and Q. So now my flash drive is all ready to go, and what I've done is I've added at least one game for each system so I can test every system out. And now it's time to plug my USB flash drive into my powered off MegaPi case. Once it's plugged in, I'm going to turn the power on. And now what it's going to do is it's going to start installing the games and box art from the USB flash drive to the micro SD card. And depending on how many games you added, it could take a little while. Once everything is copied over to your micro SD card, you should get a message saying it is safe to remove the USB flash drive. But if you want, you can wait until you see the Blast16 logo, and at that time, you should be able to unplug that USB flash drive because it's no longer needed because everything is now on the micro SD card. And it seems with my current setup, everything is working correctly. I got all my box art, and all the systems are displaying as well. Now let's check out some of the settings. If we push the Start button, then go to Settings, then General. From here, we can change the language. We can also change the logo to Megadrive or Sega Genesis for Japan and Europe. And we can turn the background music on or off. And when you have that background music on, that's going to be playing anytime you're inside a Blast16 menu. Now let's head back and go to Emulation. The auto load is going to be a save feature. It's going to automatically load your last save when you start a game. You can change the core from Genesis plus GX to Pico. There's also an option for the bilinear filter, scan lines, and frame. And what this does is it adds a little bit of artwork to the sides. Instead of just having black bars on the sides of your game, you can add these little frames on the side to give it a nicer look. And there's quite a few options you can choose from. Now let's head back one, then go down to Input. Here we can change the controller mapping and a few other features and reset the Bluetooth. Now let's head back one again, go down to Tools. From inside here we can delete games, make a backup, restore, resize box arts, open RetroArch, and access the command line. And to learn more about these features, I'd recommend reading the manual. And here's a look at the credits. It shows who developed the software, the music, and a few other things. And I'd like to give a big shout out to the developer of this software. He did an amazing job, and if you're looking to make donations for him, you can do that at his Blast16 website. So I've tried to cover some of the basics that have to do with the settings. Now let's test out some games. For the emulation, it does use RetroArch along with a couple different emulators, the Genesis plus GX and Pico Drive. Let's go ahead and try out some Mega Man Wily Wars. I believe this game was only released in Europe. It never had a US release. That is until now with the MINI SEGA Genesis. This will be one of the official games that will come with the release. As far as the emulation quality goes, I would say it's pretty good. The Raspberry Pi 3 is more than capable of emulating Sega Genesis, Sega CD, 32X, and more. To access the RetroArch menu, it's simple. You just push the hotkey that you have assigned on your controller, and that'll take you to the RetroArch menu where you can save the game and various other features. So I went ahead and saved the game. Now I'm going to exit the game by pushing the hotkey and my C button. And now I should have a save game state that should be on the menu. So if I select the game, then push B, that'll bring up my load states. And I have 4 available, and that's the save game state that I just did. So I'm going to pick this one, and that's going to take me right back to where I was. And for some of your other hotkey combinations, you can push the hotkey plus A, and that'll do a save game state. And then the hotkey plus B will take you to that save game state. And then the hotkey plus C will make you exit the game. If you're looking to add some games to your favorite list, all you have to do is scroll to the game you're looking for, then push the C button, and then you can access the games on the favorites list by pushing up on the D-pad. And by pressing down on the D-pad, you can access the different systems, such as Master System, Sega CD, 32X, and Game Gear. If you're looking to delete games, it's simple to do. Just push the Start button to access the menu, then select Tools, then Delete Games. Then from here, you're going to scroll to each game that you want to delete, and then push the C button to highlight it. Then you'll push the A button to delete those selected games. Now let's test out some Sega CD, and we'll try out the Terminator. And I already have a load state, so I'm going to select that so I can start right where I left off. And this game plays a lot like Contra. I like it quite a bit. I never played this back in the day, but I'm actually surprised how much I like this. And now I'm just going to play on here for just a few. Now let's test out another Sega CD game. This is Star Wars Rebel Assault. And as you can see, the Sega CD emulation seems to be pretty good. So even though the emulation is good, this game itself is not so good. The gameplay and controls is just downright terrible. Now let's try out some Game Gear. We'll try out Sonic Triple Trouble. And as you can see, it emulates Game Gear no problem. Now let's try out some Sega Master System, and we'll try Mortal Kombat. And I didn't even know this game existed for the Master System. I guess it makes sense though, because they did have it on the Game Gear, and the Game Gear is very similar to the Master System. But for this game, it is a very stripped down version, and there's not very many sound effects, and it's not that fun to play. And for the last game I'm going to test out, this is Doom for Sega 32X. And this game seems to be playing really good. But I'm doing really bad. Okay, it is time for me to get out of here. If you like this video, if you could, hit that like button, and have yourself a great day, and I'll see you next time.
You